Hello and welcome to Gendering Geopolitics, my short series where I have quick 10-minute conversations with women who are doing amazing work around the world. My name is Emily Prey, and I'm a senior analyst at the New Lines Institute in Washington, D.C. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Lucy Kassa, a freelance journalist for major global outlets who has been tirelessly covering the war in Ethiopia. Thank you so much for joining me, Lucy.
Thank you for having me.
So, how has your work as a journalist been affected by the war and the communications blackouts in Tigray?
My work has been affected greatly. A story which would normally take me less than 2 weeks now takes me 1 month and more because I can reach out the people on the ground whenever I want to reach out. And if you have noticed my reports after June 28, after the siege was imposed by the Ethiopian government, are most of them are limited to the capital Mekelle and its outskirts because it's difficult to know what's happening in the rural areas of the Tigray region. The Ethiopian government has effectively blocked the coming out of information from the Tigray region. We normally say people are dying from starvation, but we don't know the scale and true picture of the crisis, how many people are dying in the rural areas. It's been a year now since the siege was imposed. It's not difficult to guess that people are dying from starvation, but because of the communication blackouts, we don't have any information about what's happening in the rural areas. And I know a lot of people have stopped. A lot of people have given up in covering about the region. So it's been affected greatly.
So, you've worked and reported a lot on sexual and gender based violence in this war, while many would actually ignore that aspect of this war and many other conflicts around the world. Why is it important to you to bring attention to these types of crimes?
So in the early months of the conflict, the case of sexual violence were like all other case of war crime that I cover. But gradually I happened to know about very horrible stories. I happened to find women with a very horrible stories and who experience unimaginable brutality and the torture. Uh, it's like it's very difficult to ignore and not to focus on those cases. And there were even times that there were times when after talking to the rape victims, I say like, the ones who died are lucky. The ones who were killed are lucky because with sexual violence, the trauma is it remains with the victims. And that's the reason that I cover all other cases, but the reason that I was particularly focusing on the sexual violence is because the nature of the stories is not like any other cases of rape. It's weaponized, and it's also it's been also used as a way of cleansing, and and the unimaginable brutality is just like difficult to ignore. It occupies your head, it makes you restless and sleepless, and that's the only reason that yeah. But but at first it was like all other case of war crime.
I can tell that it's incredibly difficult for you to talk about, but thank you so much for your reporting on it because it's really important for the world to hear what's happening. So, can you talk a little bit about the importance of the political agenda to the Ethiopian government, the TPLF, and other groups party to the conflict?
So about this, I I have been uncovering violations committed or like crimes committed by all sides of this conflict. And I have been receiving online hate attacks and from all sides of the conflict whenever the stories don't support the narrative, their narrative. So what I have come to understand is from the reactions to my stories is that the civilians who are paying the cost or like suffering are like a commodity. People don't really care about those civilians paying the costs. Their suffering matters only when it adds up to the political agenda, when it adds up to the narrative. If it doesn't help to the agenda of both sides, nobody is interested, nobody will react. So disguised in the campaigns, in the genocide campaigns, like I can say majority of them are, I can tell now from my experience and from the reactions that I have seen that the motive is not really the violations. The motive is not really the suffering of the civilians. And in the sense, even justice is something to compromise if it doesn't help the political agenda or the narrative. I can say all sides are willing to compromise justice. So, but the cases stand by themselves, even if people don't advocate for the protection of the civilians. The cases are out there; they speak. And, I'm not denying that, but when you separate the violations from the narrative, from the agenda, it looks like people are not really interested or they don't react. And so that tells that the motive is, from all sides, the motive is winning the war, for the narrative to win, for political agenda to win. And the civilians' life, the rapes, the starvations, the diseases only matter when they add up to the agenda. That's what I have come to.
Lucy, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on Gender and Geopolitics, and thank you so much for your important reporting on this war.
Thank you for having me.